Good evening. You are tuned to Cafe Cabaret. Tonight we have a special presentation entitled The Wrong Hero Presents The Story of Kreisler Fenster. Now, this is a play that was actually called Cruel and Unusual Politics, but since I've already presented a show entitled Cruel and Unusual Politics, I didn't want to give people the wrong impression. So we'll just call it Kreisler Fenster. As you notice, there's no logo. There's only a little countdown, hardly any color bars. That's typical of the incredibly professional presentation that you've grown to know and love here on Cafe Cabaret. So without much further ado, I'd like to tell the story of Kreisler Fenster. Now, just to give you an idea of who's who in this little scenario, there's Kreisler Fenster. He's a Texas politician in his late 40s, early 50s, and he's pretty tall. He's 6'2". He has all the cowboy stuff, cowboy boots, big hat, all that stuff. And there's the reporter. He calls himself Gabriel Haltbar. He's short, about 5'6", pretty heavy, about 180 pounds. He's in his late 20s, early 30s. And then there's Tony Fumetti, who is a political consultant. He's 6 feet tall, weighs 240 pounds. He's in his early 40s. There's Johnny Bona, a reporter for a daily newspaper. He's of average height, weighs about 150 pounds, very thin, pale, and his hair is completely gray, even though he is only 40 years old. There's Michael Mack, a magazine writer. He's in his late 30s. He's fat and rather dark looking. There's Arthur J. from the Weekly Alternative newspaper. He's in his late 20s. He's slender, tall, and has long hair. And then there's Police Commissioner Frank Marks, who is in his early 50s. He's ruddy, red-faced, and beefy. Sort of think of Frank Rizzo or Richard Daley if you want some sort of idea. Now, the setting of this particular presentation is in Providence, Rhode Island. So, without much further ado, let us begin the story of Kreisler Fenster. Act 1, Scene 1. A hotel bar in Providence, Rhode Island, late evening. A tall man, dressed in a fashion more befitting to Texas than New England, is walking back and forth in a highly agitated way, muttering to himself, and clearly very intoxicated. And he says, "My girlfriend left me. I even gave her a present. I gave her some steel wool pads. They even had soap in them. I've had it with this dump. You know where they have all the best whiskey? All the best whiskey goes plumb straight to Washington, D.C. And you better believe I'm heading there on the first thing smoking, partner." Kreisler Fenster wanders off. A young man seated at the bar asks the bartender, "Who is that bum?" And the bartender says, "Hey, sonny, show a little respect. You're young, you got your health, you got it made. Him? You wouldn't know how to look at him, but that guy used to be the governor of Rhode Island." "You gotta be shitting me." "It's the God's honest truth. It all happened a little before your time, but if you got some time to kill, I'll tell you the whole story." "I got all the time in the world," says the young patron. "I was supposed to be at work 8 hours ago, but I didn't show up yesterday either, so why buck a trend?" Bartender: "Well, it all started out with this guy who got a little too big for his britches. He thought he could play in the same league with the big guys, and boy oh boy did they dust him off. His name, get this, his name was Kreisler Fenster." Act 1, Scene 2. The time is an afternoon in early May. The scene is in an executive's office suite. Seated at an enormous desk is the president of IFCOR Manufacturers, Kreisler Fenster. He is a tall, silver-maned man of erect bearing and craggy features who looks to be in his late 40s or early 50s. From the way he sits, hunching into the phone, conducting his business, it is readily apparent that he is in many respects a driven man. Having spent most of his childhood in Texas, he is able to command a formidable drawl when it suits him, yet he is also capable of exuding an air of gravitas, despite his exuberant and deliberate lapses into earthy colloquialisms. Molly, the secretary, is only heard via speakerphone. Her voice is youthful and slightly nasal, and she speaks with a heavy North Providence accent. The reporter, who calls himself Gabriel Holtbar, is short and stocky, but in his way, an equally driven individual. His tone of voice throughout the scene is deceptively conciliatory. You get the impression that beneath the velvet glove is a coiled serpent waiting for its moment to strike. The scene begins with Kreisler Fenster on the telephone. "Listen, Steve, is that you? We going ahead or what? What's that? It's a done deal? Shopping around, huh? Who you going with? Pupco? Good luck, Steve. Let me tell you what's in store for you. First, they'll hit you for an inflated high-low estimate, and then when it comes time to you to ante up, they'll sidle over you just as smooth as a screw child and tell you they had to increase the contact price by such and such a figure, and you'll end up paying double, if you're lucky. Sure, tell them you want a binding contract. Fine. The suckers in hell want ice water, but they ain't going to get it. Listen, Bill Griffin is from the School of Hard Knocks. Them lawyers of his are real vultures. Scavengers. They can smell fresh roadkill a mile off. Tell you, I wouldn't use Pupco's components on a bet, but I sure would like to know where they get them ambulance chasers of theirs. Between you and me, Steve, them sons of bitches could talk a starving dog off in a gut wagon. I wouldn't give 2 cents for any scrap of paper Pupco shoves in your face, and you can go and tell them Kreisler Fenster told you so, too. Steve, there's an old saying down in Texas. You can wash in one hand and spit in the other and see which one gets filled up first." Molly on the speakerphone. "Mr. Fenster, your 2 o'clock appointment is here." "Steve, listen, gotta call you back. Promise you won't sign anything. Give me 24 hours. I'll match their price and throw in some bells and whistles, too, free of charge. And you won't have to worry about no misunderstandings either." "Mr. Fenster, your 2 o'clock call is waiting." "Listen, Steve, gotta run. The boys from the press want to talk to me." "I don't know. I guess I'm just destiny's taught. Say hello to Bill Griffin for me. Listen, our boys in R&D are working on some killer apps that are smoother than pulling a hair out of a cat's ass. Yeah, catch you later." Kreisler Fenster turns to see the reporter standing in the doorway carrying a briefcase. He rises and motions him in. The reporter sidles over and shakes his hand. Kreisler Fenster says, "Sit down, Mr. Holtbar." The reporter sets his briefcase down carefully and seats himself. "Please, Mr. Fenster, call me Gabrielle." Kreisler Fenster ignores him. "Now see here, son. What's all this about your paper wanting to interview me? Why would anybody give a hoot in hell about an old wildcatter like me? Say, ain't you the guy that did the interview with the Russian astronaut?" "Our paper is interested in profiles of prominent individuals who have actually accomplished something with their lives, Mr. Fenster. Men who aren't afraid to speak their mind and maybe share some of their secrets of success. Besides, you have to admit, you've done some pretty newsworthy things in the last year. It's not every businessman who manages to corner 90% of market share." "Get to the point, son." "The real reason I've been sent to interview you is the rumor that you're planning to run for governor of Rhode Island." "The draft Fenster movement? Hell, son, I ain't no politician. I ain't voted in 25 years. "You mean you're not registered to vote?" "Not since I got shed of my short pants." "Well, people are wondering, sir, whether you consider yourself a Democrat or a Republican." "Democrat? Republican? Hellfire, son. I'm a Texan." "Can you confirm whether the rumors are true?" "Well, now, son, if I said one way or the other, it wouldn't be rumors no more now, would they?" "That's certainly true, Mr. Fenster." "Say, listen, kid, do you mind if I call this fella back? It's kind of urgent." "Do you want me to wait outside?" "Nah, that won't be necessary. Hey, you might learn something. You know, I'll tell you, Gabrielle, a lot of business is just like fishing. It's easy to hook 'em one provided you got the right bait, but it sure is hard to get 'em in the boat unless you know where you're at." "Yes, that's been my experience, too." Kreisler Fenster turns to the telephone. "Hello, is this Susie? Hiya. Still as purty as ever? Say, listen, honey, let me talk to Steve. Just tell him it's me. It's about lunch tomorrow. That's right. Yeah. Steve, listen, you make up your mind about that contract yet?" "Uh-huh." Look, Steve, let me put it to you this way. Right now we're like two circles. You ever studied geometry? Well, you're a circle and I'm a circle, and we touch, but we don't quite intersect. Now I'm the big circle, and all the straight lines lead straight to the center no matter where you are. You see what I'm getting at? Listen, I'll be honest with you. Your contract won't make a dime's worth of difference to us. It won't even slow us down. We can always use the business, but frankly, it's the exclusivity aspect of it what attracts me. What about Pupco? Fuck 'em. Don't even bother with them. Listen, those clowns are sub-suppliers. They can't give you a fixed price contract any more than I could churn butter out of my ass. And here's another thing. They're offering you a bargain rate, right? Well, you better believe they're not about to invoice you solely on the basis of timesheets. How would they stay in business? We don't worry about shit like that. He winks wolfishly at the reporter and throws him a wink. Because we're killers, Steve. Like I said, it's not your business we need, it's the exclusivity. That's why I'm prepared to give you a break price-wise. Listen, Steve, I hope you remember back when you were in the Eagle Scouts. Hey, I'm a scout too, that's how I know. Scout's honor, Steve, Scout's honor. Listen, with me you'll be getting a better deal, short-term and long, and you'll also be dealing with the best there is. Look, you agreed to take my call, right? Something must have been telling you you could do better than Pupco. Listen, the way our plan is set up, we could start tomorrow. And we're not like those other guys. You're not going to have to worry that we're going to adjust our prices on you. You ever notice when they adjust the prices, it's always in one direction and it ain't down? With us, if the costs increase, we'll bite the sour apple and swallow it, if you know what I mean. You got my word on it. Scout's honor. You got a call coming in? Listen, I'll call you right back. I got this young man here. He's supposed to be interviewing me later. Mr. Fenster, you got a call on line 2 from a Mr. William Griffin. Put him on hold, Molly. You see, son? You see how I dominate? Now watch how I clean this bastard's clock. Billy boy, it's been a long time between drinks. What's that? Okay, let's cut out the happy horse shit and get down to brass tacks. How much will you take to back off? Take me to court? Ha! Them shyster lawyers of yours got mothballs coming out of their ass. Restraint of trade. I'll break you in half if you pull a cheap stunt like that. By the time I get through with you, you'll be quivering like a French poodle shitting a pork chop bone. I'll crack you open like a shotgun. By the time my briefcase jockeys get done with you, it'll look like someone busted a case of eggs in your ass. Is that so? Look, let's not get into a pissing match over nickels and dimes. Let's put the spit on the apple. Tell you what, how does 20% sound? Now, I don't think you're understanding me. 80% for me, 20% for you. Okay, 25%. Like it or lump it. Listen, Bill, I don't want to take up any more of your time. Think it over and get back to me. Oh, hey, Billy, one more thing. There's an old saying down in my neck of the woods. You poke around the fire too much, you burn your fingers. Later. He hangs up, says to the reporter. So, listen, youngster, you got any questions? You might as well ask them now. Well, Mr. Fenster, I don't want to get off on the wrong foot, but there are a few questions I would like to ask you at this time. And, there's just one thing that's been bothering me. Well, let's assume that, in fact, you are running for governor. I've been talking to some people who got an ear to the ground, and they tell me you've been taking all the necessary steps. Well, anyway, from what I've been able to find out, you've never been a commissioner, you've never been an agency director, you've never been a department secretary. As a matter of fact, you have no experience in government whatsoever, and basically, you do not have a government career. I mean, basically, you're a businessman. So let me ask you, why are you running for governor? Well, Gabrielle, let me assure you, there's no offense taken. Now, I'm on the record as neither confirming nor denying these rumors, but I will say this. People are looking for something different. If I'm the hottest thing to come down the pike since sliced bread, I guess you can't really blame the newsboys for wanting to hop on the bandwagon. Now, let me ask you a personal question. Fair's fair. Your accent sounds kind of familiar. Where are you from? Well, to tell you the truth, I grew up around here, but I also spent some time in upstate New York. Is that so? Whereabouts? Lockport. Lockport? That's right out of Niagara Falls, isn't it? Yeah, that's right. I'm surprised you ever heard of it. It's not a very big town. Well, it just so happens that I grew up in San Antone, but then I went to Ohio State University for a semester. Now, that's where I met my wife, God bless her soul, and we decided to take our honeymoon in Niagara Falls, but to save some money we lodged in a motel in Lockport. You know, some of my best memories of that in my life are in that little grease pit. I didn't know you went to college at all, sir. Well, I must admit I wasn't really cut out for college life. I knew that right off the bat. Now, you're talking to somebody who dominates, and I just couldn't see spending 4 years of my life up north for a piece of paper with some fancy Dan scribbling on it. That weren't going to do me a lick of good. You see, son, I'm a believer in plain talking. I don't need a bunch of $3 words to get my point across. Well, anyway, getting back to my wife. Me and her ended up here in Rhode Island for a while because, you see, I ended up serving a hitch in the Merchant Marine out of Newport, and I must admit it was kind of depressing at first. Hell, they got a ranch down in Texas that's bigger than the whole damn state of Rhode Island. But you needn't quote me on that. Mr. Fenster or Mr. Stephen Seeley on line 1. He picks up the phone. You don't mind if I take that, son? Well, Steve, how big an order do you want? What do you want to put in an order for me or what? Oh, swell. Listen, this goes against every principle I hold dear, but I was just reading in the Wall Street Journal about this goddamn wastewater surcharge you're going to be hitting us up with. It's on the municipal level. Hey, not to worry, I can still bring it in for 30% over the figure we originally discussed. Well, I'll tell you what, we want your business badly enough to make it 25%. Now, think it over, if you have to, but I'm telling you the God's honest truth, you're not going to get a better deal from Pupco. Hey, besides, they don't have the capacity to do the whole job for you. They're going to farm it out, sure as I'm sitting here. You can depend on it. Overtime, this and that, and you know what? The costs will go right through the roof. Look, I'll meet you about halfway. 15% over and above. Maybe less if we can expedite it before the legislation goes through. Listen, you gotta be on top of the ball in this game. Nobody ever got fat pitching fast balls past Kreisler Fenster. Hey, Steve, we still on for lunch tomorrow? Okay, if the good Lord's willing and the creeks don't rise. Later. Hangs up. So, Mr. Fenster, you were telling me about your hitch in the Merchant Marine. Well, it's not the most glamorous branch of the service. There's not an awful lot to tell you. I sure didn't win no medals or nothing. I just did my 2 years, kept my nose clean, got out, floundered around for a couple of months, and I got the idea for IFCO. Took a few courses in business management over at Bristol Community College, studied a little contract law in my off hours, and then I invested my nest egg in a little costume jewelry factory that was going nowhere. Did a lot of telemarketing, and boy howdy, here I am. Well, Mr. Fenster, I somehow got the impression you got your start in the oil business. Well, son, that's where I made the real money. You see, when I was just about your age, how old did you say you are? 26, sir. Well, when I was just about your age, I saw the oil crisis coming. Now, I ain't no mind reader, but I can read the handwriting on the wall. Now, you might be too young to remember this, but the oil companies made a killing during that so-called crisis. And it was right after that I started IFCO. I put the blinders on and I thought about nothing else for 10 long years, and that's how I got to where I am today. Of course, me and my wife, we sort of grew apart during that time. Mr. Fenster, Mr. William Griffin on line 2. Put him on hold. So, Gabby, all this talk about me running for governor? This is off the record. But sure, I've been turning the idea around in my head. Hey, but you know something? In 5 years, I'll be able to buy this fucking state. So a part of me says, why should I bother, huh? Mr. Fenster or Mr. Seeley on line 1. He picks up the phone. Hey, Steve, you still on the fence? Are you going to join the team? Got some questions? Fire away. Delivery? Within 3 working days. Standard wages, hourly, and piece rate. If any items are missing, we'll ship them express, free of charge, of course. Look, we can clear this up over lunch tomorrow. Listen, Steve, I got a call on another line later. He picks up line 2. Hello, Bill? Hope you come to your senses. Can you hold? He says to the reporter, I'm sorry, Gabrielle. I got more riding on this than I've been letting on. I understand, Mr. Fenster. Shall I step out of the room for a few moments? If you'd be so kind. The reporter leaves, but he leaves his briefcase. Kreisler Fenster says, talking to Bill Griffith. Sorry about that, Bill. I'm not taking your goodwill for granted. That's not the way I operate. Okay, I'll run it by you one more time. You had the contract all sewn up. I saw an opportunity to steal some of your thunder, and, well, quite frankly, I barged in and upset the apple cart. Now, believe me, I'm more than willing to compromise. I'm willing to come to some kind of settlement that'll make it a win-win situation for both of us. Listen, I don't want to tangle assholes with you if I don't have to. So what do you think of the 75-25? 50-50? What dope you been smoking, Bill? Look, pal, bullshit is bullshit, and this is bullshit. Listen up. I got red tape up the wazoo. Environmental protection, pollution control, removal expenses, safety regs, the whole 9 yards. One of my fitters is in the hospital. I got packing expenses, consultancy fees. I'm up to my ass in alligators, and you're trying to keep me from draining the fucking swamp. Now listen, 70-30 is absolutely the best I can do. You gotta be out of your goddamn mind. I'm doing this out of the goodness of my heart, you fucking mossback, and this is the thanks I get? What's got into you, Bill? You're acting like the cat that swallowed the canary. Give me a second. Let me think about it. Fenster rises from his desk. He appears weary, and as he walks around it, his shoulders appear slightly hunched. He walks back over to the phone and picks it up. 70-30, Billy. What's it going to be? Shit or get off the pot? Oh, okay. The deal's off, huh? Huh. Okay. Well, I'm just going to say one thing about that. You are a hickory-headed pissant, and I'm going to run you out of business. And he hangs up. The reporter enters the office, picks up his briefcase, and heads back out the door. Where you going, son? Come on back here and let's finish up this little old interview we were doing. Reporter, standing in the doorway. I think I've got everything I need, Mr. Fenster. Well, hell, there's a whole heap of lot of other stuff I hadn't gotten to tell you. The reporter, still standing in the doorway. Well, Mr. Fenster, there's something I haven't told you. You see, I'm not a reporter. My name is not Gabriel Haltbar. I'm an attorney. My name is Bill Griffin, Jr. And this isn't an ordinary briefcase. It's got a recording device in it. And so, Mr. Fenster, I hope you have a good day. And by the way, I'll be seeing you in court. The reporter exits. Kreisler Fenster slowly sits. Putting his elbows on his desk, he holds his head in his hands. The scene blacks out. Act 2, Scene 1. The time, later in the same afternoon. The scene, Kreisler Fenster's office. Fenster is still seated at his desk when the speakerphone buzzes. Mr. Fenster, Mr. Fumetti is here for his 4 o'clock appointment. Mr. Fumetti, who's that? Mr. Tony Fumetti. He's the political consultant you were going to discuss your campaign with. Send him in. The words had barely left his mouth before Tony Fumetti bursts in the door. Fumetti is in his mid-40s, tall, dark-haired, weighs about 240 pounds, and is highly effusive and cocky. Classic Type A personality, strong-willed, aggressive, and a fast talker. He wears a somewhat baggy dark suit and trousers, which are just a shade too tight for him. Fenster, somewhat subdued, says, "Come in, Mr. Fumetti. Glad you could make it." Fenster reaches to shake Fumetti's hand. Fumetti gives it 2 vigorous pumps, then launches into his spiel. Mr. Fenster, pleased to meet you. Hope you don't mind if I don't sit. I think better on my feet. Let's get right down to business. You're thinking of running for governor. That's good, that's good. Fresh blood, that's what this state needs. First of all, I want to say I hope you've been thinking long and hard about what this is going to mean. Running for office isn't anything at all like running a business. I see it all the time. Guy makes a bundle on pork bellies or what have you, thinks the ability to make buckets of dough makes him a natural-born leader of men. Doesn't always work that way. Doesn't always work that way. You see, when you're a businessman, the public eye isn't on you. With politics, the lights go on and it stay on, and then all of a sudden you got to think about everybody in the state, not just the people that work for you. Well, I'm not finished. Do you want my advice or not? So, like I'm saying, running for politics, it's different. You got to think about the broader elements of the electorate. People tell me I'm a pretty broad element of the electorate myself. No time for exercise. Got to keep moving. Here's the difference. In business, it's just the bottom line. Take health insurance. To you, it's just a big pain in the ass, but it's a big deal for most of the people in this country, not to mention this state. How they're going to pay those medical bills, which, as you probably know, can be awesome. Take me, for example. I've been paying into my insurance 20 years, and I've only had to use it once. When was that? When someone put lice in my bed. Now, who in hell would do a thing like that? I don't care to discuss it right now. Suffice it to say, that part of my life is in the past. I've got a client base all over the country, and under most circumstances, I'd have one of my staff come in and give you a little pep talk. But I gotta tell you, from the sound of it, your case was too interesting to leave to some college kid, so I flew in myself. But I gotta catch a 6 o'clock to LaGuardia, and I know you're a busy man too, so I'm not gonna waste a lot of your time right now. Bottom line, right now, the electorate is in a really pissy mood, what we like to call a volatile situation. They want lower taxes and more benefits, and they're only going to vote for someone who's going to promise to trim the fat without depriving them of their goodies. You ever had one of them diet milkshakes? What does that got to do with running for governor? I'm getting there. Work with me. Anyway, there's all these diet drinks that say you're going to shed ugly fat in seconds, and yet they taste like chocolate ice cream. That's what the electorate wants, a sugar-titted bargain basement prices. Now, you know and I know that it can't be done, but if you're running for office, you got to pretend like you got some magic wand you're going to wave, and hocus pocus. They're going to get what they want at no cost to them. Now, I understand you're considering a run as an independent. That's right. Good in the sense that you can say that Kreisler Fenster is his own man, beholden to none, with no ties to any special interest group. Too rich to steal. That's the subtext. Of course, we all know that's horseshit. So an independent is good, but it's also bad. Bad for when you actually have to govern. Getting on the ballot won't be too hard. The main sticking point is the state legislature. Democrats, most of them. So you gotta sleaze up to every one of them bohunks and promise them you're gonna put the shaft to the Republicans if and when. Then you go to the Republicans and you tell them their man ain't got a snowball's chance in hell unless you're on the ticket to fuck up the Democrats. Divide and conquer. You ain't just woofing, Kreisler. Anyway, to a certain extent, as an independent, you're in the catbird seat. It's the bottom of the ninth. Base is loaded and you're the umpire. Fenster, that's a German name, right? Texas German. You're not Catholic, are you? Lutheran. Fuck. Too bad you're not a Jew. Anything would be better than German. Irish or Italian, French, Canadian, Portuguese, for Christ's sake. But shit, German? What's your wife's maiden name? She's not Hispanic, is she? Well, actually, don't tell me, let me guess. She's German, too. Well, down in Texas, that might be a win-win, and if you were running in fucking Milwaukee, you'd be golden. But let's face it, mister, this ain't Chicago or Cleveland or Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. This is Rhode Island, and the only Germans around here are in the fucking Goethe Institute, and they're in Boston. There ain't no way they're gonna go for a fucking duchy in this state. Hey, I'm a man of the world, but when I hear Germans, I see gypsies marching off to the gas chambers. Now, just a minute. Let me ask you something, Kreisler. You ever look out your window? Sure, every now and then. Well, look at all them poor sons of bitches out there. All they know is their own kind. They're basically just cavemen, really. It's Flintstone City out there. You know the old saying, like attracts like. Now, I'm sure when you get off work, you like to hang around with people like yourself. Not the horsey set, maybe, but good solid citizens with hardwood floors and their own teeth. Well, if you're really serious about running for governor, the schmoozing is constant. You got to be one of the schmoozwazie. And when you're on the campaign trail, you got to spend most of your time rubbing shoulders with people you wouldn't even sit next to on a plane. People who never been on a plane, if you can imagine that. What are you getting at exactly here? I'm not quite sure I get the drift to your... Don't take that condescending tone of voice with me, Kreisler. I'm here to help you. And your job is to sit in that chair and keep your mouth shut for once. You know, I'm not as old as you, but I've been in this business for 20 years. I've gotten hopeless bums elected to the fucking United States Senate. Crooks, womanizers, alcoholics, you name it. And I'm going to tell you something right now. You got a halfway decent shot at being governor, but all your money won't count for jack shit unless you answer my questions. Well, I'll do my best. You got to do better than that. I want 110%. You got to understand, I'm taking a hard line with you because I don't think you actually have a serious shot. No, actually, I do think you have a serious shot. But independents don't care if you're richer than God or they don't have any advantage when it comes to raising money. Listen, I don't care if you're richer than God or Howard Hughes. You got to come up with some direct mailing with lists of people who contribute to campaigns. You got to have those special interest groups to go to bat for you, those businessmen you pal around with maybe. And most of all, you need an ally. Some mainstream politician who's willing to support you and who can work the phones and get people to raise money for you. So let me ask you flat out, why do you want to be governor? So I can advance my ideas. And what are your ideas? Good government that serves the people in an honest and effective way. Well, that's all sweetness and light, Tinkerbell, and you can tell that to your fucking mutt. But with me, you got to be a lot more specific. Well, I'm anti-corruption, anti-crime, and I want to get those pissant bureaucrats off the businessman's back. Oh, that'll play in South Providence. I can see all those ghetto guys up there going, yeah. Listen, Fenster, I don't think you're reading me. All systems are not go. Give me something that'll fit on a bumper sticker. Fenster for governor. Doesn't move me. Fenster, for a change. What the hell does that mean? You gotta be more exact, but just vague enough to appeal to everybody. Get off the fence. Vote Fenster. Good, now we're getting somewhere. Okay, if you're really serious about this run, we can get down to brass tacks. So tell me something. What's your Q rating in this burg? Q rating? Name recognition. How many people are there who know who you are? Well, I have about 2,000 people working for me, which means about 0.2% of the people in this state have a vested interest in making you governor. Maybe 1% if we throw in their friends and relatives. And then again, there's always the lunatic fringe. What are you getting at, son? Don't call me son. I'm not your fucking son, okay? What I'm getting at is the lunatic fringe doesn't vote at all, usually. I guess they're too busy stocking up on dried fruit at Army-Navy stores and reading the Book of Revelations by the light of whale-fat lamps. What I'm saying is that the lunatic fringe is your swing vote. They all come out of the woodwork for you just to give the other two guys hell. Your job is to think of some hot-button issue that'll make them want to vote for you without pissing off the rest of the electorate. Now let's highball it and say that adds up to about 10%. Fuck, even Adolf Hitler could get 10% with some good direct mailing. No offense, Kreisler. Well, I'm certainly not as bad as Hitler. That's just the point. Nobody is. Then again, he did make the trains run on time. No, that was Mussolini. Anyway, let's say you got 1% solid support, 10% moderate support, maybe another 5% undecided that you could get with a last-minute media blitz. That's still a little shy of halfway. In a three-way race, you need 33 1/3% plus 1. Our job is to figure out some surefire way of getting them chuckleheads to pull that lever for you. Some crazy gimmick that'll make 1/5 of the electorate change their minds at the last minute. Trouble is, you're a businessman. Your options are limited on the bread and butter issues. You can't come across as pro-union, and no matter what you do, you're not going to make people think you're pro-environment. You got to have something up your sleeve that'll make them come out for you. Potholes. What's that? Potholes. Fix the potholes and they'll vote for you. Yeah, yada yada. Fix the potholes. That's what they'll say. Hey, wait a minute. What is it? Shut the fuck up. I'm having the biggest fucking brainstorm of my political career. Listen, for Kreisler, how much of your own wad are you willing to sink into this fucker? Oh, I don't know, maybe 500,000, 750? Kreisler, you fuck, that's chump change. Listen, do you really want to be governor? I mean, really? Well, actually what? This is a simple yes or no question. I don't remember saying answer yes or no or actually. Well, actually, I want to be senator, but I figured I'd start small. That's the fucking ticket. Listen, how much money do you actually have? I'm talking liquid assets, money you could actually get your hands on. Don't hold on me, asshole. Just spit it out, you fucking kraut. How much money do you have? Well, if I had to, I suppose I could come up with, 10 million? You're holding out on me. I can't believe this fucking shit. Tell me you couldn't come up with 20 million. I fucking dare you. Well, if you're talking the plant and physical assets and bank loans, maybe. Forget it. What's that? Forget about it. You want to be governor? It'll cost you a cool 20 million. But of course, you couldn't come up with 20 big ones. But if you could, what's your plan? You really want this, right? You really want it? Well, yeah, sure I do. Why? No bullshitting now. Why? Well, if I was governor, I could get me one of them low-number license plates, and people would drive by me and say, that's the governor. Well, yeah, that's a pretty good reason. Okay, here's my plan. You got all these people who aren't even registered to vote. Piss poor, a lot of them. Now let me ask you, what do you suppose these people want? Money. A lot more money. Right. But how do they get money? A job. But there are no jobs in this state. So they got to travel out of state. But how do they get there? A car. But cars are expensive. So here's the deal. They register to vote. You send them a voucher that pays their car insurance. Provided Kreisler wins. Kreisler loses, no voucher. Simple as that. Is that legal? Who fucking cares? You'll make it legal once you're in. Now listen, I got a plane to catch, so... wait a minute. This plan of yours sounds kind of far-fetched. Do you really think it's going to work? Kreisler, I'll tell you what. I got your bumper sticker for you. It's perfect. You'll get the liberals, you'll get the evangelicals, plus you'll pick up about 90% of the swing vote. What is it? 2 words. Kreisler. Believe. Exit Fumetti. Fenster sits at his desk, pondering. Blackout. Act 2, Scene 2. Time, 5 minutes later. Fenster is still seated at his desk. He picks up the phone. Molly, do me a favor, will you? Leave a message on Mr. Fumetti's email stating that Mr. Fenster will no longer be requiring his services. Thank you. Blackout. Act 3. Scene 1. The time is an evening in early June. Scene, a hotel bar in Providence. Present are Kreisler, Fenster, and 3 reporters. Johnny Bona from the Daily newspaper, Michael Mack from Southern New England Magazine, and Arthur J. from the weekly alternative paper, the Rhode Island Argus. They're all seated at a big round table taking notes while Fenster holds forth. Glad to finally meet you gentlemen in person. Mr. Bona, I read your editorials almost every day, and a lot of them are very much on the money, especially about the need to bring jobs to the state. Mr. Mack, I must say I especially enjoyed your piece about the Great Swamp in Southern New England Magazine. It was very interesting how you were able to paint such a vivid picture of the area. And, Mr. J., I must say I don't read the Rhode Island Argus very much, but whenever I do, there's always something provocative in it, and you're usually the one who wrote it. They nod in acknowledgement. Now, as you boys know, I've thrown my hat in the ring, and being from Texas, you know it's actually a 10-gallon hat. And as you're probably well aware, I've been considering making a run for governor of this state, and this makes it official. I also decided that I will be running as an independent, and the name of my party will be Rhode Island for the People. Now, you may be asking yourself why I don't do things the established way and run in one of the 2-party primaries. Well, I'm going to head that one off right at the pass by saying you don't succeed in any great endeavor by doing things the established way. All the great ideas by all the great thinkers were arrived at by taking a contrary point of view and trying to prove it right or wrong. If the Wright brothers never got their plane off the ground, I guess they'd be calling themselves the wrong brothers. Anyway, the reason I'm not running in either of the primaries is very simple. You're Democrats, you see. They got a lot of ideas, but they strut and brag like a crow in a gutter, and that's just not my style. Your Republicans, on the other hand, they got a lot of sensible instincts, but most of the time they just hang there like a 3-toed sloth with amoebic dysentery, and when they do get around to doing something, why, it turns out they don't have 2 ideas to rub together. That's why I'm an independent. And mark my words, I believe that the independent, with no obligating ties to either of the hidebound political parties, that independent man is the wave of the future. And after all, the independent man is the official state something or other of Rhode Island. Mr. Fenster, when did you decide to run for governor? Last week. Mr. Fenster, any ideas on your running mate? Now, that's a little premature, but you can bet your bottom dollar that he or she will be a man of principle and have the courage of his or her convictions. Mr. Fenster, would you vote for a gubernatorial candidate with little or no experience in government? Well, son, I will say that I've always thought that attitude is more important than a padded resume. You know, there's an old saying where I come from. A man that don't like to get dirty won't last 10 minutes out on the oil rigs. That's a lesson I'm sure you journalists can understand. Mr. Fenster, Rhode Island is currently 48th in the state in the nation in new job starts. Specifically, Mr. Fenster, how would you create incentives for businesses to relocate here in Rhode Island? Well, Mr. Mack, that's a question I can answer in 2 words. Tax breaks. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't believe in handing out a free lunch to businesses, but on the other hand, I don't see no reason to charge them $10 for a $3 sandwich. Question, Mr. Fenster, where do you get a $3 sandwich? Well, there's this nice little place right next to the Dunkin' Donuts on Branch Avenue that'll sell you a $4 sandwich that's big enough for 2 meals. But let's not change the subject. And I'm going to do a précis of this scene. He basically, you know, hands him a whole line about how great he is. And it finally ends with the fellow from the alternative newspaper saying, a question that's on everybody's lips, Mr. Fenster. Exactly why do you want to be governor? Now, you watch me in the weeks to come, and I think that question will answer itself. I must mention, though, that the last person who asked me that question turned out to be an industrial spy. That's all, folks. I got to be at an event in the old age home. Don't want to keep the old folks waiting. I'm talking to you all again, I suppose. Fenster exits. There's a pause. Johnny Bona says, that old coot's plenty sharp. And Max says, like a knife. And Jay says, yeah, right, like a knife in the back. Just what we need. Pontificating pseudo-populism from the barefoot billionaire. And here you guys are feeding them cream puffs. Golly, Governor Fenster, what do you think about baseball, hot dogs, and apple pie? Gosh, Governor Cowboy, how do you break a wild jackass? You guys make me sick. Hey, listen, Artie, listen. You never know. That kook might actually win. Yeah, and then we'd have to deal with him every day. You better hope not, fella. As far as I'm concerned, it's Governor Moon for governor, Marks, Police Commissioner Marks for dictator, and Kreisler Fenster for Halloween. Exit, blackout. Précis of Scene 3, of Act 3, Scene 2. I don't know, Mike. How do you see the race shaping up? Well, that police commissioner is one tough bird. Before Fenster entered the race, I would have given him even odds against the incumbent. Now I'm not so sure. You don't think Governor Moon is putting him up to this? What, Fenster? You gotta be kidding me, Johnny, but I'll tell you what. I wouldn't be surprised if one of them strikes some sort of deal with Fenster. What kind of deal? I don't know, but I hope it's something good. I don't trust that Commissioner Marks. I'll bet he's out there right now trying to dig up some dirt on Fenster. Think he'll find something? I already checked it out. He looks pretty clean to me. Not clean as a whistle, maybe, but clean as a hound's tooth, anyway. Well, I mean, you know, there's the usual unsavory business practices, oil money, greasing a few palms, nothing nobody can prove. Enter Fenster. Oh, hello, Mr. Fenster. Listen, boys, let me ask you something. Shoot. Either of you boys gambling men? Because if you are, and you can use an extra $100 on election day, I'd lay a 5 spot on me to win. Act 3, Scene 3. Various voiceovers of television news coverage of the Rhode Island gubernatorial race. Good evening. Today is June 15th. Just who is Kreisler Fenster, the long, tall Texan currently residing in the biggest little state in the Union? And more importantly, why does he want to be governor? Your Action News team is on the scene with a special report at 11. This is Boston's News Center 56. This July 4th, voters in Rhode Island are asking themselves, is it notoriously corrupt politics as usual in the race for governor, or is there a new player in the race? Tune in at 11 for a special news update on the barefoot billionaire and what promises to be the most exciting gubernatorial race in Rhode Island history. This is WABC, your news source for the metropolitan New York area. Today is August 10th. In tiny Rhode Island, a Texan Brahmin bull threatens to shake up the governor's race. Politics in Little Rhodey will never be the same once the voters meet millionaire industrialist and former Merchant Marine Lieutenant Kreisler Fenster. More at 11. Today is September 11th. Here in Texas, a lot of people who grew up with Lieutenant Kreisler Fenster are mighty excited about his race to capture the governor's chair in tiny Rhode Island, a state many of them didn't realize existed until last June, when the smiling lieutenant threw his hat into the ring. Some of his friends think he's loco. Others say he's crazy like a fox. One of his oldest friends, who plans to contribute generously to his campaign, has been quoted as saying, "Today, Rhode Island, tomorrow, Delaware." More at 11. Act 4, Scene 1. The time is the evening of October 30th. The scene, a hotel bar. Tasteful Halloween directions are hanging on the walls. Several bottles are arranged around a bar, and a small table is at center stage with 2 wooden chairs, where political consultant Tony Fumetti and police commissioner Frank Marks are seated. Frank Marks is in his early 50s, ruddy, red-faced, and beefy. He is a man of great personal force and physical strength, some of it gone to flab. The 2 men lean toward each other conspiratorially from opposite ends of the small table. "Commissioner Marks." Frank. "Whatever you say, sir." "Commissioner, I've been observing this race from the day Fenster tossed his diaper in the ring, and let me just say, are you sure it's okay to talk?" "Talk as much as you want. I got no secret from these people. We both know that Governor Moon is dog meat. His negatives are scraping 50%. He's got a 70% unsatisfactory rating. The unions are defecting to you, and if it weren't for that Fenster character, you'd be in like Flynn. And that's just what's got me worried. Fenster could siphon away just enough votes to put that moron back in office. Fenster can hurt you really bad, and you gotta find some kind of way to marginalize him, keep him under 15%. "Listen, Tony, let's get one thing straight. We can talk about surveys and focus groups and all that other shit until kingdom come. But what it really comes down to is we gotta cut Fenster's balls off, and we gotta do it soon. Word on the street is our boy is richer than King Midas, and he's got a whole shitload of oil money coming in from Texas. Only nobody can prove a thing. And anyway, we don't got time to fiddle fuck around. Now your job was to dig up some dirt on this creep, and I hope you got something to tell me." "Well, he likes his liquor just as much as the next man, or maybe a little more, but Apparently, he's given it up for the duration. He got divorced about 7 years ago, but it wasn't contested, and there's no kids. Irreconcilable differences, something like that, and his wife's off in Europe, and we haven't been able to get to her. He shoots his mouth off a lot, and he embarrasses the hell out of his people, but as far as we can tell, we haven't been able to catch him in an out-and-out lie. He comes across as one of those tell-it-like-it-is guys, and the voters eat it up. He's got some sort of shady business dealings going, but nobody's talking, and election day's next week. Best I can tell, he's scraping just under 20% in the polls. Nowhere near enough to win, but enough to give you a big fucking headache if enough Democrats turn out for Moon. Fenster's been all over South County, scraping up support from anyone who's got 2 nickels to rub together. It's mostly promise this and promise that. As far as I can tell, he hasn't been passing out any vote money. Fenster's playing his cards close to the vest, I'll say that for him. But I have no idea how he expects to win. You're a fucking genius, you know that, Tony? I'll tell you what he's up to. He's going to come up with some alakazam shit at the last fucking minute, and it's going to blow me clean out of the water. But I got a trick or two up my fucking sleeve. Just you watch. Listen, Tony, what kind of operation you running here anyway? He's in this race to win, just like all of us, but he's got one weakness you ain't noticed. His head. Excuse me? His fucking head. He's got a big head and a small heart. When the chips are down, he'll fold. He's a little nutty, but he sure ain't crazy, or else he wouldn't have a pipeline to all that moolah. Well, let me tell you something, Tony. That fucker should have stayed in Texas, because this is one election money can't buy. Let me ask you something. What kind of underwear does he got on? Briefs? What color? White? Listen, Tony, don't you ever try to bullshit me again. Fenster wears jockey shorts. You can tell by the way he hitches his pants up when he thinks nobody's looking. A guy wears briefs, he'll tug at him in a different way. He's got 20 different suits, all the same color, and he sends his secretary to the dry cleaners every other Monday. He sends them to Eagle Cleaners on Charles Street because they got a 3-for-2 discount. He buys those Stouffer's frozen dinners because he's too cheap to eat out every night. Every now and then he'll get takeout up on Mineral Spring. Mostly it's chicken or pizza or shit like that, but he'll spring for the Chinese every so often. He calls in the orders so he doesn't have to waste time standing around. Usually it's orange beef or orange chicken. For recreation, he likes to go to the dog track, but he never places a bet. I guess he figures out how much he's won or lost in his head. You'd think he'd be fucking his secretary, but he ain't. Sometimes he sleeps in his office. Now my question is, how's come I know all this and you don't? I'll tell you why. Every cop in this city has a direct line to me. They call me every time our man makes a move. And, hold on and let me finish. Last night he went to the airport. There's a restaurant he eats at when he feels like giving himself a treat. Whenever he goes out, he's always facing the door. He knows he's being watched and he wants to find out who. He won't. Now you're up in your office with your polls and your surveys and your direct mailings and shit, and right now you ought to be working the streets. Listen, Tony, I don't need you to tell me the numbers are breaking his way. He's almost up to 30. He's been getting the Cambodians in South Providence to register in droves. He went to a wine and cheese with the good government crowd in Tiverton Four Corners, and he's got them in his pocket. Those snobby bastards on Aquidneck Island think he's an intellectual because he promises to revitalize the cities. Never mind, he's never even been elected fucking dog catcher. He works the French Canadians by telling them he'll get the mills to open again. He tells the Portuguese they can have all the cable stations they want. They believe him because he knows how to pronounce Charisse. You think he's going to slip up and go straight down to Crapper? Forget about it. I sure as hell wouldn't want to get into no debate with that guy. He's slicker than snot. Whoever he's got working for him down in Texas has got all the bases covered. Tony, it's going to be a squeaker, even as matters stand. And once he lets loose with his bombshell, that's all she wrote. I got 30, he's got 30, Moon's stuck at 28, and he's shit out of luck because his numbers ain't going to budge. And there's 12% undecided, and it's a week before the election. Well, Commissioner, even if it's as bad as you say, and my polls indicate otherwise, all we have to do is get a little over half the undecideds, and we win. Not so fast, Tony boy. If Moon looks like toast by Monday night, Fenster's got it in the bag come Tuesday morning. The way I see it, we got to shore up Moon just enough so he don't dip below 28. And that means we got to hit Fenster hard. We got to hit him hard by Friday. What you got lined up? Well, this one's a doozy, Commissioner. 30-second television spot, black screen, voiceover, voice of doom.
Kreisler Fenster, the outsider from Texas. He can run a company with hundreds of employees. Can you trust him to run a state with 1 million citizens? Rhode Island needs a man who's tough enough to make a difference in our war on crime, a man who's tough enough to stand up for what's right, no matter what it takes. This November 5th, vote for Police Commissioner Marks. He cares enough to do what's right. Then there's a picture of you and out. It stinks. It's okay if I was at 40, but it's lousy in a close race. Well, we could go with the picture of the turkey with a moon button and the ham with a Fenster button. Too fucking cute. Okay, here's the attack ad our boys in Oppo have whipped up. Picture of slums, boarded up buildings, drunks, kids getting arrested at the front of the Civic Center, menacing homeless people, voice of doom. Had enough? Then your logo, your badge, your face, and out. It's already in the can and ready to go. It's no good, Tony. It would be just fine if we were going after Moon in a two-man race, but in a three-way, it makes Fenster look just as good as me. Christ, that could be just as easily an ad for Fenster. You got all these slums and crime, and what are the police doing? Eating donuts? I need something that'll send a positive for Marks and make Fenster look like a piece of shit. I got into this race because Moon is a do-nothing, not because I thought I'd be getting to a pissing match with a jillionaire. You got anything else? One more. But it's got to air Sunday and Monday only. We can't give Fenster time to respond. It might splash some mud back on our side, but it'll scare the shit out of the voters. Basically, I'll tell you what I got. White screen, picture of Fenster, full color, warts and all, voiceover. Kreisler Fenster thinks he can buy his way out of anything. Picture of Fenster fades. Parking tickets, picture fades more. Possession of an unlicensed handgun, picture fades. Drunk and disorderly, picture fades more. Even lawsuits. White screen. This election is not about having money. It's about who can get the job done. Fade in with your picture. This November 5th, this man isn't buying your vote. He's asking for it. Marks, Frank Marks. Because trust is the one thing money can't buy. I got just one question. Will any of those charges stick to him? Oh, it's all guesswork, Commissioner, but some of it will stick to him. Remember, we don't accuse him of any of this stuff. We're only saying he thinks he can buy his way out of it. And believe me, I spent enough time with him to know that's exactly how he thinks. Okay, run it, but downplay committee to elect. Make it Republican Party and put committee to elect in extra small print. Now, this ad could backfire. We could blow our own heads off, but it's worth the shot. We can't take any more of Governor Moon. He's busting our chops. Christ, Tony, that's a low blow. I had you pegged all wrong. How'd you come up with it? Well, Commissioner, Frank, there's an old saying. The ends justifies our meanness. Act 4, Scene 2. Voiceover of the television news coverage of the Rhode Island gubernatorial race. Good evening. Today is Sunday, November 3rd. Reactions are mixed regarding the recent attack ad gubernatorial candidate and police commissioner Frank Marks has aired regarding regarding allegations made against independent maverick Kreisler Fenster. Incumbent Governor Moon has gone on record as stating he deplores the controversial 30-second spot as cruel and unusual politics and gutter campaigning, while candidate Fenster, a prominent local businessman, promises a response in a speech scheduled to air on WLVI at 8 p.m. tomorrow night. He urges voters to tune in to be sure they've gotten both sides of the story and promises to make a surprise announcement concerning his candidacy for governor. We'll be broadcasting a special feature on this historic gubernatorial race at 11 p.m. tomorrow night, in which highlights of Mr. Fenster's speech will air. Blackout. Act 5, Scene 1. Summary. Fenster gives his speech in which he responds that the attacks made against him are unfair and that he has been a resident of Rhode Island for 20 years and that Rhode Island is a better place than people like Police Commissioner Marks would have you believe. And his surprise announcement is, tomorrow the voters of Rhode Island are faced with a grave choice, one that cannot alter the past, but a choice that will affect their future and that of their children and their children's children. It is the promise of those generations to come which has inspired me to make a promise of my own. If elected, I promise, as your governor, to take one immediate step to remedy Rhode Island's most immediate problems. Unemployment is higher than it should be, corruption remains a sad fact of life, the economy is overly dependent on unpredictable variables, and our business climate is not as inviting as it should be. None of these problems can be fully remedied unless we take bold steps to cut our state deficit. As governor, I will donate a large portion of my personal fortune towards eliminating the state deficit, and I will spend the remainder of my term creating an environment in which the state of Rhode Island will once again be prosperous. Moreover, I intend to accomplish this in a single term. I am a businessman, not a politician, and once my job is done, I intend to retire from public life. One final word. Let those who say I am trying to buy this election remember one crucial fact. I am prepared to put my money where my mouth is. Let me ask you, can they say the same? Thank you, and God bless you. Act 5, Scene 2, various voiceovers of the governor of the television news coverage of the Rhode Island gubernatorial race. This is the 11 o'clock news. Today is Monday, November 4th. Our top story, Kreisler Fenster, the wealthy industrialist, in a speech broadcast at 8 p.m., has promised to donate his vast personal wealth to solving Rhode Island's deficit problem. Surveys taken immediately after the broadcast show the race is a virtual dead heat, with 30% favoring Governor Moon, 33% for Police Commissioner Marks, 35% for Kreisler Fenster, and 2% still undecided. The polls open in less than 7 hours, and there's little doubt that with Mr. Fenster's surprise announcement, this has become perhaps the most exciting race in Rhode Island history. Our on-the-scene coverage of the gubernatorial race will continue throughout Election Day with updates and the latest exit polls every hour on the hour. As of right now, our analysts have declared that this three-way race is too close to call. This is the 11 o'clock news. Today is Tuesday, November 5th, Election Day. Top story. The polls have closed only a few hours ago due to an unprecedented turnout by voters, due almost entirely to the controversial governor's race. It's almost too close to call, but exit polls indicate that Kreisler Fenster leads Commissioner Marks by fewer than 900 votes, and at 32%, it looks like incumbent Governor Moon will come in dead last in this exciting three-man race. This is the 11 o'clock news. Today is Wednesday, November 6th. Our top story. The votes have been counted, and barring a recount, it looks as though Kreisler Fenster will be the first independent governor in Rhode Island history with a plurality of 116 votes out of over 200,000 cast. Incumbent Governor Moon, in a concession speech characterized by political analysts as gracious, vowed to do everything in his power to ease the transition. Strangely enough, the Republican candidate, Police Commissioner Marks, has yet to concede the election to the man who some say is now his most bitter rival. We'll feature Governor-elect Fenster's comments live in a special broadcast tomorrow night at 11 p.m. This is the 11 o'clock news. Today is Thursday, November 7th. Our top story. In a stunning upset, Kreisler Fenster, who only last night seemed assured of taking his place as Rhode Island's first independent governor, has apparently been denied victory by a last-minute influx of absentee ballots, which now give Police Commissioner Marks a slender 38-vote plurality. Earlier this evening, Mr. Fenster had this to say: "I'm going to the district attorney's office first thing in the morning to take steps towards initiating a recount. The people have spoken. I am their choice, and no police commissioner is going to be permitted to circumvent their decision and steal this election out from under them." Commissioner Marks has offered no comment other than to state that he won the election fair and square, and to mention that he was adopting a wait-and-see attitude. Act 5, Scene 3. The time, 11:05 p.m., Thursday, November 7th. Scene, Fenster's office. Fenster is at his desk looking over computer printouts of precinct tallies. A portable television is on. Commissioner Marks has offered no comment other than to state that he won the election fair and square, and to mention that he was adopting a wait-and-see attitude. Fenster turns the television set off. A rap at the door. Enter Marks. Fenster says to him, "How did you get in here?" "Security guard let me in. I am a policeman, you know." "Policeman? Crook? Who knows? I have a feeling you're a little bit of both." "Look, Fenster, you gave it your best shot, but when it comes right down to it, you got beat." "We'll see what the DA has to say about that." "Oh, the DA is a fine man. Honest as they come, and a real fighter, too. I'm sure he would have been very interested in what you had to say. Trouble is, he needs proof, and you haven't got it. So why don't you just save us both a lot of trouble and bite the sour apple, if you know what I mean? I've got a very nice concession speech all written out for you by a very talented fella. I believe you know him, Tony Fumetti. I ever mention his older brother was my best friend in high school? Tony's a hell of a guy. Smart, very smart. You can always count on Tony, that's no lie. Listen, Marks, there's no way in hell I'm going to read that speech of yours, so why don't you just get the hell out of here?" "Or what? You're going to call the police?" "Ha, ha, ha. You know, I believe you will read that speech, Kreisler. Can I call you Kreisler?" "Now, Kreisler, I'm not a betting man. Apparently you're not either, which is sad because, well, If I were a gambler, I'd be willing to bet a great deal of money that the Attorney General would be very interested in hearing this. He takes out a tape recorder. Do you remember this? He turns on the tape recorder. It's a little conversation you had with a young lawyer. His father's a good friend of mine. As a matter of fact, we went to high school together. Small world, ain't it? Now listen. Turns up the volume. How much do you want to back off? Take me to court, huh? Restrain a trade? I'll break you in half if you pull a cheap stunt like that. By the time I get through with you, you'll be quivering like a French poodle shitting a pork chop bone. I'll crack you open like a shotgun. By the time my briefcase jockeys get done with you, it'll look like someone busted a case of eggs in your ass. Marks turns off the tape recorder, casually. You know, Kreisler, I admire you. The people of Rhode Island admire you a great deal. But the DA, he won't admire you very much. As a matter of fact, my friend, the DA, why, he'll put you in jail. Tell me something, Kreisler. Are you familiar with the expression, making big ones out of little ones? It refers to breaking rocks with a sledgehammer in the hot sun. Well, that's what you'll be doing at the ACI. He'll see to it. I'll see to it. You'll spend so much time laundering prison uniforms you'll think the grass is blue. Oh, you're plenty mad, I can tell. I've seen that look many a time. You'd burn a hole right through me if you could. Well, I bet you if you actually did have that unlicensed handgun, you'd have shot me dead by now. Well, I know you're not a gambling man. I watched you at Lincoln Park many a time, and never once did you ever place a bet. So I'm sure you won't want to gamble on the outcome of what the district attorney might have to say. So I have a suggestion for you. Try to get a good night's rest. It certainly won't be easy. You'll probably be tossing and turning all night. Drink some Ovaltine. That's what I always do. 'Cause in the morning, bright and early, you'll be wanting to take a good look at that concession speech. It's a very dignified and gracious speech. Took quite a while for Tony to put it together. Now, I know how frugal you are, so I'm going to give it to you as my gift, sort of like a very early Christmas present, as my very first act as governor-elect. Marks hands Fenster some papers. Well, Kreisler, gotta be running. Got my own speech to write. How does this sound? Today, the people of Rhode Island have made history and learned an important lesson. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. That might well be the motto of Rhode Islanders everywhere, and I know, because I'm one. Not as good as your speech, I'll admit. I have a feeling Tony gave you all the best lines. Why don't you give it a look-see? If there's anything you don't like, well, give Tony a call. Nice talking with you, Kreisler. See ya. Exit Marks. Fenster, as he reads the speech, he mutters to himself, Bastards. 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 Bastards!
The Wrong Hero, this concludes Cafe Cabaret for this evening. Tune in next week for more of The Wrong Hero here on Cafe Cabaret.